Good morning, everyone. I am just looking to see whether Councillor Butler comes on screen. There he is. Right, I think that we are then all assembled, and it is, I think, 9:31, so I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for June 15th. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, other changes to be made to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as circulated? Thank you, Councillor Journeau. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. The minutes of the regular meeting of June 1st have been circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of June 1st, 2021 as presented? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 4, presentations. We have two matters for presentation today. The first, a verbal presentation from Mr. Greathead regarding the Connaught Offsite infrastructure or services project update. I see Mr. Greathead there. If he needs no introduction from you, Mr. Given, then I'll just invite Mr. Greathead to go ahead.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. We'd just like to bring to attention to Council today the progress we've made on the Jasper Connaught Offsite Services project. And we will be coming back next week and asking for some ratification of this contract. I just want to go through some of the steps that we've gone through and some of the problems that we're going to be facing and some of the risks to this project as we progress and make sure that we get this off. I'd like to preface this by saying that one of the biggest risks to this project will be the timeline. It was a very aggressive schedule to go through and make sure that we get this project done before the frost hits. And, you know, we didn't want this project carrying over multiple seasons. And so that's why we went through, I'll just go through the process a little bit of how we got to where we are today. So we contracted out an engineering firm, Altera, and we had them provide us a preliminary design and a final report that we presented to Council on what the project scope would entail. After that, and that was back in, we engaged them back in February, and that was complete in March. We presented to Council the preliminary design, and then we got Council's approval to proceed on March 2nd with the project. That led us into contracting out the design, and we had several proponents bid on the work, and we selected WSP to guide us through this process. As we got to the scope of work that was required, it became apparent that this is a complex project, and it's going to really disrupt traffic for the summer. Any phase of this project would be considered a significant undertaking for the town of Jasper. We would be replacing valves all the way from Patricia Street, from Willow, from Patricia and Willow to tie into Connaught, as well as Spruce and Pine at Patricia, again tying into Connaught, as well as Hazel. So our routing, we had to upsize some of the valves, and some of the valves that we have existing in our system aren't holding sufficiently. So while we got the holes in the ground, we're going to be replacing those valves. So from there, like, we've broken the project in, there's 5 significant phases, and we're working towards making sure that we have 2 exits out of town, 2-way traffic at all times. So whether we are working on, if we're working on the if we're working on the Hazel and Connaught intersection, then we need to ensure exit through all the way to the west end of Connaught, and vice versa. When we have the end of Connaught dug up, then we want to make sure that we have traffic flow through Hazel. So we, due to the complexity, the timeline, we recognize that those are our biggest threats to having this project become successful. So we decided at that point to issue an RFQ for a prime contractor for this contract. We posted on APC for the contract work on this. We had 20, at my last recollection, we had 27 different firms download the package, and 25 submit expressions of interest for this project. We narrowed it down to 3 proponents that we felt had the capacity to be able to field the number of crews required for this job, and with the relevant experience to be able to carry off the scope of work. So we've issued an RFP. We completed the RFQ process for our prime contractor, and now we have submitted the RFP to the 3 preferred contractors. Some of the processes that we are asking them to evaluate, and that we will be evaluating on their proposals, will be the traffic accommodation plan to make sure that they understand the scope of work, the need to make sure that traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, is impacted as minimally as possible. And we wanted to see how they plan on doing the staging of work. So that RFP closes on Friday, and we will be back again Tuesday asking for a recommendation to close this up, and then be able to start work. Right now we have a bid, or have it in the bid package, that work shall commence October 3rd, but that leaves an incredibly tight window. So we are asking, we will be asking for a special meeting to ratify this and be able to allow for a little more timeline for the contractors to do the work. So our evaluation committee meets on Friday this week coming, and we will be reviewing the 3 proposals. From there, we've also engaged a lot of, well, we've got pre-planning, and we are also planning out on scoping out the final work for the job, looking at the road allowances and how they're going to affect the lots. So there's an awful lot that has been going on, and we're actually really excited to be able to bring to council a recommendation next week and proceed with this project. But at this point, I just wanted to give you an update of where we are, that the project has been going forward, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead. Questions from councillors? Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Greathead, I think I heard you say work would commence October 3rd or a date, but I think you mean complete by then?
We want completion by Thanksgiving weekend. And we built the contract in so that it will be a penalty phase for non-completion of the work by then. And that is our driving, sorry, and I must have misspoke. I meant August 3rd was when work was supposed to commence, but we are actually hoping to shorten that up as much as possible in the earlier part of the summer to allow for as much progress.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson and Mr. Greathead. Mr. Given, I think I saw your hand up if you wanted to respond to that, and then I'll turn to Councillor Chernow.
Sure. Well, just wanted to highlight the reason that this is here in front of council is because the process is going to move quickly. We want to ensure that we advantage the community by being able to have this project done as soon as possible and the disruption minimized as much as possible. And so we're here really to flag to council that we're going to be asking you to make a relatively large decision next week. You've already seen the project. We will see the real costs. The tender closes this Friday. The request for proposals closes this Friday at 2 p.m. So you can appreciate that we're going to be pushing it to try to get anything on the agenda for next week. And so you should expect that the package, this item may come slightly out of sync with the whole agenda. We'll see what we can do to get it in there. So it is part of the regular package, and we will ensure that it's publicly posted. I think the big thing that we wanted to flag is that we will also be asking council next week to review it as committee of the whole, and then that same day to conduct a special council meeting so that we can have council give final approval if you choose to go ahead with the project. So that's the major thing that we want to make sure that we're giving full notice to council and full notice to the community that that this is going to be a little bit of an extraordinary process. But the need to do that is really to give the contractor the best potential to complete the project on time in one season with as little disruption to the community as possible. Because if it went through a regular process, it would just every single day that we take reduces the potential of actually completing on time and being able to have it closed in and buttoned up before the winter season.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Councillor Butler, I see you, but Councillor Journeau, I saw you previously. So Councillor Journeau and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the members of administration. You mentioned a few dates there, Mr. Greathead. When do you expect traffic disruptions to commence?
Currently, Councillor Jeannot, as it's written in the contract, because we will need ratification from council and approval in the special meeting to move any earlier. Right now, we've set site occupancy starting at August 3rd.
Okay.
But given the nature of the project, we can buy 5 weeks of time for this project, were we to be able to award the contract next week. So that's what we're going to be asking for. And then we will be reviewing the proponents' responses as well, because we've asked them for what they anticipate as a timeline, what their work schedule is. Like throughout this process, we've really made sure that we wanted to find that whoever's bidding on this project actually has the scope and the understanding of the scope of the project, the complexity, and the incredibly tight timelines. So that's where, as we're trying to manage this project from a risk management perspective, that's where we're coming from. We've all known that this is an incredibly tight timeline.
And may I follow up? Second question. Now, where are the disruptions going to occur? Just on Connaught and the 3 major intersections? Or where specifically are the closures going to be?
There's going to be 5 phases as we look at it to this project. So there's going to be the Willow and Patricia intersection and carrying through to Willow, right through to Connaught. That would be one phase. Another phase would be from Patricia and Pine, right through to Connaught to be able to tie in. Same with Spruce. So we're looking at the tie-in at the Hazel intersection as one phase of the project, and then installing the deep services all the way along Connaught as another phase. So that's a total of 5 phases. And we've encouraged our proponents to look at having multiple crews working at a time. So we may actually be tackling 2 phases, 2 of the smaller phases simultaneously. But traffic accommodation, again, is one of the driving factors on how we're going to be evaluating our proponents and seeing how that they're going to be able to manage the traffic accommodation and pedestrian flow through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Greathead, for the report. I have a question only about the procurement process itself, which I appreciate you outlining in brief form. And let me say I'm very appreciative of administration's ongoing efforts to push this forward as fast as it can, which is exactly what council requested. But on the procurement process, we of course have a fairly substantially worded policy on procurement. You mentioned that you proceeded with an RFQ followed by an RFP, which is about to close. Is that process, the process that you followed according to our policy? Has there been any variance in our policy in order to push this forward, or have you taken all the steps that would be normally taken by policy for a project of this scope?
I don't believe, Councillor Butler, that we've been violating our procurement policy in any means at all. The RFQ is something that we've done previously within the municipality, and it's a system that works quite well, we find, just so we make sure that we are dealing with responsive bidders and proponents to these projects. We needed to see the scale. Now, having said that, I do know that I have heard some concerns locally that this was a different process than we've ever used before, and some feel that they've been excluded, but I don't see that as the case. These contractors, the three proponents that we've finalized through the RFQ process, they've all been asking who local contractors are, who they can get to work as their subcontractors. So this is not necessarily going to be an all outside of Jasper project, and I know that there's going to be some elements of some local work, and I hope that's been addressed and understood.
I will allow Councillor Butler first to follow up, and then Mr. Given, you can contribute.
Sure, thanks very much. And really all I was looking forward for was assurance that we're following policy, which is always a concern of mine. I'm happy to hear that. I myself, I didn't ask that question because of any concerns I myself have heard. So glad to hear that I know we have a robust procurement policy, and just wanted assurance that we were following it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Mr. Given, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, I was just going to say to confirm, we are absolutely working within not only our policy for council's confidence, but also the provincial and federal trade agreements that we're subject to. And so this opportunity, like all municipal opportunities meeting the threshold, are publicly posted and available on the Alberta Purchasing Connection website. And so council can have the confidence that we're following not just municipal policies, but also those provincial and federal trade agreements that we're subject to.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Other questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Keller-Harampe.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead, Mr. Given, for your report. Just one question. Are you confident that we'll have enough accommodation within town to house the crews should they come from outside during the August-September period?
Councillor Keller-Harampe, yes, we have done some preliminary arrangements. We've made sure that we reserve some spots at the contractor camping sites. That's available for them. Our proponents know that those are available and accessible to them, as well as we believe that most of the contractors, if they do need hotels, they know the situation in Jasper and they've been looking.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greathead, for your presentation today. And I don't have any questions. I'd just like to express that I'm looking forward to reviewing this as committee of the whole next week. And if committee decides that we do need to call a special meeting, I, as deputy and chair next week, will be ready to present that special meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Janot.
Just for this benefit of the public that may be listening in, I think we should be providing definitions for RFQ and RFP. Thank you.
Councillor Janot, thank you for that. The RFP is a request for proposals. It's slightly different than just going for a tender package. A tender package is where you would say, I know that I want to buy a white Ford F-250 with all these options, and then you have a defined package that everyone bids equally on. An RFP is a little bit different, where it's a request for proposals. So it's where we know what we want to have done, but we're not exactly sure that we have the best way, or we're looking for optional ways to complete a project or bring things forward. So that gives us a bit of latitude to ask for our proponents for these projects to bring your best to the game. Tell us what your expertise is in traffic management. Tell us how many jobs that you've worked on a similar size, and express some of the solutions that you've had to come up with. So the RFP has a little bit more latitude, and you use that when you just, there's some unknown conditions and some unknown variables within the project. And the RFQ is a request for qualifications, or a pre-qualification bid. So this allows us to assess whether a firm that would be bidding on the work would have the capacity, the understanding of the project. So those are the differences in the process that we've used thus far.
Thank you, Ed. Just to follow up for Councillor Journeau, I think RFQ is also a phrase that he identified. I didn't hear you respond, Mr. Greathead, to the Q part.
Oh, sorry, an RFQ is for the request for qualifications. We also use the RFPQ, request for pre-qualifications. And an RFQ can also be used as a request for a quote. So we can go, under, a smaller ticket item, maybe an item worth about $4,000 to $5,000. We would go and shop it with local providers and ask for an RFQ or a request for a quote on a specific item. So that's more along the tender line of thought, where we have a very defined specific article that we're looking for.
Thank you for those responses. Thank you, Councillor Journeau, for the question. Councillor Demota.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Greathead. Thank you for giving us the update. And, I have a lot of trust in you and the process, so I'm quite fine with receiving this information and look forward to the progress. I'm just wondering, with the ground being opened up, are we going to have some opportunities to observe some other efficiencies that may arise while we have this open, and if there's other work that can be done while we're there, moving of valves and things like that, that we might have the ability to take a look at as we move along here? Or have some of those already been pre-addressed? And excuse me if you already spoke to those. I'm just looking for a refresher here because it escaped me.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. No, we've been working with our partner agencies, namely ACO Gas and ACO Electric, to make sure that we're doing this work. And they were advised early in the process back in February and March that we were looking at doing this work. We've coordinated our efforts with them. So for ACO Gas, they're going to be pulling in, they're going to be putting valves in at either end. And when we're backfilling after they come and install of our utilities, our deep services, namely our sewer and water lines going in, as we're backfilling and we get to the lower depth, the higher depth of their berries, ACO Gas will be installing their gas line, as well as ACO Electric will be installing the conduit for their conductors. We have discussed with them about moving their conductors, instead of having them right up along Connaught. We're actually having them plan to push them down towards the ends of the road allowances. So we have a cleaner, less obstructive view on Connaught. Also, we're going to be putting in communication conduits in there, so that way when our communications, Shaw, Telus Bell, whoever that be, instead of having to go redig a road up, we'll be able to sell them some space in a conduit so that they can plug their lines in. So we've been really working forward with this. We do understand the complexity, and we got one shot when we got the hole dug to get it right. So we've been thinking towards that.
Go ahead, Councillor DeBona.
Just to follow up, and that wasn't a leading question. I just thought of something as you were talking about those details. We've seen over time that there have been some issues near those intersections with like back alleys from Connaught that have a lot of, I guess, delivery access, and the roads have taken some wear and tear. And I understand from past presentations and discussions that the services in the road are too high up to actually do more work on there. Is there an ability here now to maybe address some of those other areas? Like, let's say I'm going to use behind the SO station, because that was always a contentious kind of area, and or even on the other side behind the other buildings there.
Go ahead, Mr. Given.
I'll take this one. Councillor Demoda, administration is aware of those challenges. And I think in any project, one of the biggest scoping challenges is where do you end and where do you cut off the project? Because you could say, well, this next thing is just a little bit adjacent to that, and then all of a sudden you're doing the entire municipality. So administration has already identified some core infrastructure that's in the roadways that we are going to be replacing and using that opportunity, particularly valves, down, I believe it's Pine and Willow. That's where we see some real concerns. We're going to be increasing the capacity of the systems along Pine and Willow, but the project extent doesn't go into the alleys. We can have a look and see if there are improvements that we can make to the existing condition of the alleys, either operationally or through any other project. But to be really direct, no, we haven't. The project scope does not include going into the alleys. That just would be sort of one step too far, because that sort of scope creep would be a real challenge, especially considering budget. I will sort of flag to council here that with the cost increases that we've seen in lots of materials, I fully expect, I don't fully expect anything. Except that our early estimation that we brought to you for budget approval was just that, an estimation. And so with the cost increases that we've seen in many materials over the last number of months, I fully expect that our estimation will not be exact to the penny that comes in from the contractors. So with that in mind, administration is of the sense that we really need to contain the project scope, and the other types of issues that you're looking at, we would have to attempt to address other ways.
That's good. And if I may follow up, I appreciate that. I quickly anticipated some level of questioning there, and I appreciate those answers, and I'll have them now. I'm grateful, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with this, and I have a lot of trust in the process. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Greathead. I just have one comment / question, and I will direct that, I think, to Mr. Given. This will be, as we recognize, a serious disruption for the community. Signage is probably the best we can do to alert visitors, but I'm wondering whether there is a plan to develop a communications plan locally once the remaining pieces come together and we know where we stand. I mean, a session like this is part of the communication plan. Next week will be the same, but I think it will be important that Ms. Nadon and her team rigorously let our residents know about the disruptions to come. And it's housing at the core of this, and council made a conscious decision that we would prefer a large disruption over one summer rather than a continuation over many summers. But it just occurs to me that communications locally, at least, is a critical component of all of this. So I'm wondering whether that will simply roll out, or whether at some point early in July, perhaps we'll see also a communications plan.
So, Your Worship, you're exactly right. Administration of the same mind that local communications are going to be key. That's why Ms. Nadon and her team have already been developing the plan for how we will do that local communication. And you're correct that we see this initial discussion with council in a public forum as a start to that. We are not launching into the full communications because, to be frank, it's possible that council may choose not to go forward with the project. There would be significant costs that would have already been expended, and but it is not done until it's done, and council will face that decision next week of whether they wish to actually award the construction work. And our plan for local communications really starts with council's decision of whether or not to officially award that work to a contractor. Once that happens, that will kick off the formal plan and the start of local engagement that Mr. Don has already been planning for a number of weeks.
Thank you very much appreciated. And thank you all, Mr. Greathead, your crew, for all of the continual work on this following process, but still pushing this forward as quickly as can happen so that we can see construction, again, potentially, depending on the results of next week's session, unfold this summer and be done before freeze up. If there are no other questions, then thank you again, Mr. Greathead. We will conclude agenda item 4.1 and move to agenda item 4.2, presentation. And for some of us, at least, this will be our first opportunity to actually have a conversation and see Mr. Matthew Conte, our new fire chief. I did see his name. I see his face now. So welcome, Mr. Conte. And again, subject to any introduction that Mr. Given might want to provide, welcome to our screens.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I thought Bill asked if I could kind of come in and talk to you for a few minutes here, kind of give an update about myself and kind of what we've been doing. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to meet a good portion of the municipal staff and the council, obviously, but looking forward to kind of meeting more face to face, hopefully, and some one-on-one time once COVID kind of settles down a bit. But as far as a brief update of kind of how the last month has gone for me here, obviously it's been a learning curve, lots of new faces. I did manage to get into the municipality's office and meet a few of the staff members when I did my orientation. Went through the health and safety orientation as well, and I was fortunate enough to be selected to do the health and safety audit that the municipality just underwent, as well as kind of done an orientation with Natasha and the purchasing team, trying to get set up and ready to go that way as well. Been really working on some training materials as well. We're starting to get back to in-person training around the department. We are still keeping it a little smaller and separating into a couple of groups. Until such time we can actually get back to one evening in an entire department training session. Last week, I was also took part in the local Fire Smart representative course through Fire Smart Canada. So we now got myself certified as part of that, so I can hopefully start working with retired Chief Antigum there and taking over that responsibility. Chief Antigum's been great. He's actually taken me around on a few tours and has arranged a number of meetings with Parks Canada, the fire team there, RCMP staff, and then taking me through the community and just kind of showing me around and getting me kind of acquainted to the area. We do have a couple more meetings coming up the end of the month here with Trans-Canada Mountain Pipeline. They want to go over their emergency response plan as they're getting ready to start doing some pressure testing on their lines. That'll be on June 30th. And then I've actually jumped in and taken part of the voluntary ESS training that was going on as well. Found it a good opportunity to kind of get myself kind of acquainted to the ESS team and how their plan was working and they were operating. Also jumped in, we've been doing occupancy load classifications for a few of the businesses around. Obviously with restrictions being lifted, a lot of businesses kind of want to know where they're at and what they can do, as well as jumping into some fire prevention inspections on a few of the local businesses, as well as a couple in Parks Canada area. Around the department, started updating some of the department policies, as well as updating some of the job descriptions, noticing some discrepancies and a little bit of overlap between the full-time staff. So we've been kind of clarifying that, as well as our volunteer officer positions on the department, just kind of clarifying some of their job roles and responsibilities as well. We've promoted our 2 lieutenants to captain, actually as of last week. And we are now actually in the process of looking to promote and hire 2 new lieutenants to kind of jump on board so we can start training them up to officer positions and start to rebuild the leadership team here at the station. Other than that, I started responding to incidents as well, jumping in and kind of tagging along with some of the command staff as they were going on, and as well as a few of the MVCs and jumping on with the truck as early as this morning for an MVC and starting to work with the fire crews as well on scene just to kind of get a feel on seeing how everything's operating and their procedures and how things operate. But that is pretty much a real quick glimpse into the last month for myself. Still got lots on the go, lots of future plans and lots of meetings and trying to meet new faces as we go. So I'll kind of leave it open to Councillor. If you have any questions for me, please.
Thank you very much, Chief Conti. Questions from councillors? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you, Mr. Conti, for your presentation this morning. No questions, just a friendly welcome to you and your family, to our community, and to Jasper. And I look forward to meeting you in person one day and working with you in the future. So nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, myself as well. Welcome, Mr. Conte. My question was just out of interest, who were the new captains that you've promoted?
We've promoted both, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the members of the department. So we had Lieutenants Pete and JJ. They've both been promoted to captain at this time.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. Other questions or just welcomes for Mr. Conte? It appears, I'm sorry, Councillor Butler and then Councillor Demota.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conte. Echo other councillors and welcome you to our community. I just have a clarification. So the 2 members that you mentioned, am I correct that those are members of the volunteer brigade? Or
yes, that's correct.
All right. Could you just outline, since we're here talking about it today, what is the managerial structure of the organization of the department, clearly with yourself and your immediate reports as I'm thinking of paid professional managerial staff here.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously there's myself. We have Deputy Chief Smith, who I'm sure you all know. And then we have our administrative assistant, Kelly Dawson. Those actually make up our full-time staff. Pete is our contracted kind of training officer and running all the training for the brigade.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate knowing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Demota.
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome you, say hi, and it's nice to finally put a voice to the face. I've seen pictures of you, so it's nice to see an animated version of yourself, and I can't wait to meet you in person. So welcome to Jasper, and I look forward to meeting you, and good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Keller-Hrampy.
Just like to welcome you, Chief, to Jasper, and I look forward to meeting you in the near future. And I hope you and your family will love living here.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Journeau.
Same, a welcome to this fine community. Looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again then, Mr. Conte. A pleasure to welcome you to the community and to your first presentation to council. I'm sure there will be many more, and I'm sure they will all go as smoothly as this one. So again, on behalf of all of council, welcome to the community, and we're excited to have you here and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for that. That concludes agenda item 4. Agenda item 5, business arising from previous minutes. Is there any business arising? Seeing none, agenda item 6, there are no department reports scheduled. I take it there are none that have arisen. Mr. given, so that dispenses with agenda item 6. We can move to agenda item 7, bylaws. 7.1 is a summary of bylaws. And for real work, we have agenda item 2, conduct, or the code of conduct for elected officials bylaw. Here for third reading, having received certification from Parks Canada. And so might I have a motion from someone to have third reading of Councillor Butler? Sorry, Councillor Butler, you had your hand up. That's just signaling that you're prepared to make that motion.
I'm sorry. Yes, it was, and I'm happy.
Fine.
to make. Thank you.
So I have a motion from Councillor Butler that council read for the third and final time bylaw number 235, Code of Conduct for Elected Officials bylaw, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to establish a code of conduct for members of council. Is there any debate on that motion? All right, all those in favor of reading for the third time bylaw number 235? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 7.3, rotation of bylaws ballot. Rotation of ballots bylaw, sorry, 2021 is also here for third reading, having received certification from Parks Canada. Again, do I have a councillor prepared to make a motion for third reading? Councillor McGrath, thank you. I have a motion then from Councillor McGrath that council read for the third and final time bylaw number 237, rotation of ballots bylaw 2021, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the printing of ballots in lots for the 2021 municipal election. Is there any debate on that motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 7.4, temporary compulsory face covering repeal bylaw, which is before us for all three readings, if we get to that point. I had originally presented a motion that this come before us. I can, if council wishes, relinquish the chair unless there is a councillor who would be prepared to make a motion for first reading, and we would avoid that technical issue, but I'm happy to do it. Councillor Connaught. Sorry, you're speaking, but you're muted.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this item up at an opportunity at the appropriate time. And I'd be pleased to make the motion for the first reading of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connaught. I have a motion then from Councillor Connaught that council read for the first time bylaw number 238, the temporary compulsory face covering repeal bylaw, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to repeal the temporary compulsory face covering bylaws number 228, 230, and 231. Is there any debate on the motion for first reading? Councillor Demota.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and administration for getting us set up for this so that we're not behind. The 8 Ball is a very proactive approach, and I'm looking forward to having some debate on the first and second reading today and being ready. The only question I have going forward, and I'm all in favor of moving forward with the first reading, just so that we're ready to pull the trigger whenever needed, whether it's today or by special meeting. And the reason I bring that up is I know that There's been a promise from the province that if the province is somewhere or at least near 70% of first dose vaccinations, that we'll be ready to open up to stage 3. And I'm just wondering if there's any stats available that indicate where we're at as a community. Because first and foremost, the main reason for us moving forward before the province was to protect our small community here, having limited resources and so on and so forth. So I want to make sure that, you know, having the best information possible by when I go and vote. So I'm just wondering if there's an ability to get that type of information. If you know, if the province is deemed at 70, does that mean that that we're close to that as a community? And if not, or if we are, it'd be nice to have that.
I see Mr. Given, but I could also help respond. Councillor Demota, there is in fact that information available. If you go to the Alberta COVID information website and click on Get Vaccinated and scroll down a bit, you will see another bar you can click on that says full stats and map. And I looked at it this morning and last night, and Jasper is at 68% vaccination for those 12 and over. And there is an interactive map that shows various I guess health regions throughout the province and stats for all of them. And it is important in the context of a challenge that I made with regional mayors recently, saying that Jasper would crush it by today. And I am not the official that can make the ruling, but so we did. We have crushed it. And we are at, as I said, 68% of our population 12 and over is vaccinated, compared to, I think, about 62% in Hinton and less than that in Edson, and Yellowhead County doesn't get its own statistics. But that information is available, and I can send you a link if necessary.
No, that's good, and I appreciate that. Usually I've been really good on the stats and not really drilling down to find that, but I appreciate that, and good job, everybody. And that gives me a greater level of comfort. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have the motion before us. Is there any further debate on first reading for Bylaw 238? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. And I've struggled a little bit with forming my place or my stance on this repeal of the face coverings bylaw, as I believe that consistency provincially is very important, and consistent messaging and consistent rules is certainly a way to have buy-in and have cooperation from the public as a whole. But I feel I have the duty to represent some Jasperites who feel hesitant with removing the face covering bylaw. My personal perspective aside, I believe that today's voting for me will represent the people that wish to have the bylaw kept in place, and that feel hesitant of visitors visiting our community, coming from larger centers and possibly large events, and showing up in Jasper without face coverings makes some of our residents nervous. So I will be voting not in favor of repealing the bylaw for those residents who have asked for their perspective to be shared at this table.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. I see you, Councillor Demota, and I will return, but I'll give everybody else a chance to speak first if they choose. Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I having put a great deal of thought into this, am in favor of the bylaw. I respect that there is concern in the among residents about this. One thing I think it is important to make clear is that our proposal here is to repeal the bylaw if and when the province goes into phase 3, and not to be preceding the province in any way. And I only wanted to make that point right now, but my preference would be to pass the first reading, put it on the table, and I do have a number of other comments and thoughts to put on the table in support, but I'll wait until we have passed first reading, if indeed first reading succeeds here today.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I will speak briefly just to echo that view. I would rather get the first reading on the table, and then we have a bylaw that we can in fact discuss. Generally, I am supportive, but I recognize that there might be some refinements to be made to the bylaw before second and third reading. But generally speaking, I echo those comments by Councillor Butler that the intent is not to have this effective in any event unless and until the province retracts its similar legislation contingent on us moving to stage 3. Sorry, you seem to be back now. Was I cut off there for that?
Yeah, we heard you clearly, but your screen froze.
Okay.
Your image froze.
All right.
We're good. We know where you're at.
Thank you. Councillor Demoto, you wish to speak then?
No, I would rather go ahead with the process and then speak at the second reading.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, then I will call the question on first reading of bylaw number 238. All those in favor? Those opposed? There is one opposed. That is carried. Could I have a motion then to read bylaw number 238 for a second time? Councillor Butler, you're prepared to do so? All right, we have then a motion. We have then before us a motion to read bylaw number 238 for a second time. Councillor Butler, you made that motion. You indicated earlier that you had some comments to make, so you can open debate.
Sure, thank you very much, Your Worship. I have a few. I do recognize that there is concern among many residents about this action, but I think it is very important that we take a broad community view here. That is what council is charged to do. That is what our responsibility is. We have, throughout the pandemic, taken pains and been very clear that our intent is to follow public health guidance issued by Dr. Dina Henshaw. She is our provincial expert in public health policy, and I think it behooves us to follow that advice. I think also that we need to make the decision that is best, in our view, for the community as a whole. And I find it difficult to align with points of view that suggest that our job here is to vote to represent one or another particular constituency of the community. We are charged with making the right decision for the community, and myself, I always will vote for what I think is the best decision for the community at large. What moves me to be in support is simply this fact that we cannot operate as a bubble. We cannot go it on our own here. Now that the province has moved into phase 2, I've noticed a significant decrease in compliance downtown already. And I know that this is going to remain a challenge and is already a challenge. We don't have the capacity to enforce a bylaw that runs against the trend in the province. When Alberta hits phase 3, that is a state of no restrictions provincially. And that is what people are going to hear. And that is what the visitors to our town are going to have in their minds. And I actually fear more the conflict that may result in our community if we have a bylaw that is out of step with the province. I am quite concerned about that. I know that all of us, I think, would prefer that visitors and residents alike wear masks when in congested areas in public. And I think we could pivot as we pivoted from a communication program to a bylaw early in the pandemic. I think now we could pivot back to a communication program where we would encourage people to please wear masks in congested areas or some other similar wording that we would continue to communicate through our signs and so on as we have, and encourage people, but I think to attempt to force people to wear masks after the province moves into phase 3 would simply not be effective. So for those reasons, I'm certainly in favor of this. I think I'd like to suggest further that the single most important thing that any resident in Jasper can do now and moving forward to make the community safer is to get vaccinated. All public health information that we are receiving suggests that the single most important thing that can be done is to get vaccinated. And while we have been thinking about vaccination as essentially something that you do to protect yourself and your family, yes, that's true. But more and more, we are learning from public health experts that vaccination is extremely important in protecting the community, because more and more we are also learning that silent and asymptomatic transmission is really important. And even if we ourselves don't feel that we are at risk, ensuring that we are vaccinated helps to protect the community. So I think that we could also advance a communication campaign similar to what we did with masking. Get the jab for Jasper, whatever works. We will have a large incoming stream of new residents. We should encourage employers to encourage their employees to be vaccinated if they have not already been. We can't force them, of course, nor would I suggest that we should, but we should encourage all residents, whether they are new or otherwise, to get vaccinated. That's the most important thing. Council could be involved in that through a social media campaign where we encourage residents by our own example. Not that I think that that residents necessarily look to councillors for example, in something like this, but it can't hurt. And I think the right thing to do is repeal the bylaw when and only when and if we move into phase 3, but to follow up with public communication campaign on those two levels that I just described. To please still wear a mask in congested areas, and please get vaccinated. So those are my thoughts on this. I do respect the concern that is out there among residents in removing or repealing this bylaw. But again, to think that we in our small community could go it alone in a province that has declared itself open, I think would just not have consequential effect. It's really a case of, do we really honestly think that we could enforce a bylaw when so publicly it has been made clear that the province is open? That may happen sooner, may happen later, but I think in this case, as we always have, we should follow public health recommendations. Sorry for the long speech, but I've said everything I need to say, so I won't need to speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Demota.
My intent here is to keep it a bit shorter, but I do resonate with quite a few things that Councillor Butler said. My only, well, I have a few trains of thought and then a follow-up question to Mr. Gibbon. You know, it's been brought to my attention that we did lead ahead of the province when we decided to go to mandatory masking. However, this is a little different because there was it wasn't a requirement, but there was a mandate for moving in the direction of promoting mask wearing. And because of, you know, our small community and our vulnerability to quickly get into a category of the per 100,000, where issues might become a little bit more detrimental to the core of the community than maybe in other areas. So my train of thought here was, is there a possibility to put our masking mandate on pause? Because there's still a lot of unknowns out there with these variants, and you know, we're getting different ones every week almost. Now there's a new one, the Delta. So and we're unsure on how that's going to affect our community. And we do have advice from health experts, but we still haven't seen what that's going to do in the province. So as opposed to repealing this and then all of a sudden our cases start going up if we get in a situation where we spike rapidly, we might be faced to be thinking where we're at. So at the risk of boring some of you, I just want to, have that in the back of our minds, and see if we can explore putting our mandatory masking on pause. And then to Mr. Given, has there been a lot of discussion on if we decide to go a different direction and keep, our masking mandatory in the community? What's the discussions with Bylaw been like, and what it might look like for patrolling the community and actually going ahead with enforcement? What are our resources like?
Your worship, to Councillor Demota's question about bylaw capacity, I will say that Bylaw has already started to see the conversations around masking become more challenging. They were always somewhat contentious, but I think when there was a fairly broad public understanding of the general health conditions, the conversations were less challenging. Not that they were never zero challenge, but they were less challenging. As more and more jurisdictions are opening up, as other communities have relaxed their requirements, particularly with visitors to our community, Bylaw is reporting that the conversations are becoming more challenging. We also see that over the course of the pandemic, that conversations about masking, particularly with some individuals, can become highly contentious and become a risk for officers. And so with my support, the bylaw enforcement manager has directed that those types of patrols around masking and reminding people about our requirement to mask must happen in twos. They're not ones. There's a working alone risk if we send an officer who is relatively lightly equipped to enforce municipal bylaws into a situation which we know from evidence across other jurisdictions can become quite hostile. So it is, as the issue becomes more contentious, and as other jurisdictions relax their masking requirement, I believe it will become more contentious. It becomes a more significant strain on municipal resources to attempt to enforce the bylaw, because it requires a minimum of 2 officers to be present when they're initiating those kind of conversations. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Demota.
Yes, in more ways than I anticipated. So that's exactly the line of answering that I was intending. So I appreciate that follow-up, and I'm glad that we hear that and we're able to have a debate on the information that's before us. And just to wrap it up, I'm not interested in stalling the process at all. I just want to have all the right information, and protecting our community is first and foremost. So I want to make sure that we have all the pieces in place, especially if we have to switch back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
I'm of the understanding that if we go to stage 3 and the cases spike again, that we'll roll back, and then when we automatically roll back into our current bylaw.
If I can perhaps address that, and I was thinking of speaking before you in any event, Councillor Keller-Hrampe. There's another matter coming before us later today. This matter, the repeal of the temporary compulsory face covering bylaw, applies only with respect to masking in indoor public places. So this is an indoor issue. When we passed our bylaw, there was not yet a provincial health regulation with respect to indoor masking. I found it necessary. Since then, there has been an indoor masking requirement by the province. Our bylaw is slightly different than the provincial regulation, but the area is already covered. So my view is that we probably have not sent bylaw to indoor public places to enforce this bylaw anyway. It is the same ground covered by the province under its regulation. If ours repeals contingent and concurrent with the province achieving stage 3, if they go back to stage 2, my anticipation is that they will reactivate the provincial regulation. We won't then be, I think, compelled in any sense to reconsider a bylaw because the area will still be covered. That is, there will be a masking requirement if necessary for indoor public places. And so I am comfortable voting to repeal this bylaw and leave it at that. If we hit stage 3 and then have to go back to stage 2, the province has indoor masking requirements to put in place in any event. And for that reason, I don't see this as something where we would have to configure our bylaw in such a way that it repeals temporarily and then comes back into place, because the field is already covered in my view. So I hope that gives at least a perspective on your question. And it is the reason that I would support and will support repealing this bylaw. It's very limited in scope in any event. And then we will have a further discussion later today about masking in outdoor public places.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I also will support this.
Any further debate then on the motion before us from Councillor Butler to give second reading to bylaw number 238? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There is one opposed. That is carried. Now, in anticipation that the province might in fact achieve stage 3 before our next regular council meeting, our staff has done their usual job of excellence dealing with our partners in Parks Canada, and they have already obtained a certification to bylaw number 238. So we can have third reading at this meeting. If we so choose, we will need a motion, I think, to proceed with third reading at the same meeting. But if council is interested in that, we could have that motion and then we could proceed to third reading of this bylaw. It occurred to me early in our discussions that there is some possibility that we would have a special meeting next week for a different purpose, but if there is unanimity, we could add this if there is any sense that it should wait a week. But otherwise, we are in a position to proceed with third reading today if there is a motion that we do so. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I would make the motion for third reading of this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, that motion from Councillor Wilson is that council agree to all three readings of bylaw number 238, the temporary compulsory face covering repeal bylaw at the June 15th, 2021 regular meeting. Is there any debate on that motion? Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. I wanted to add only one other small point. Obviously, some of the comments I made first time around had at least as much to do with the outdoor provisions as they did with the indoor provisions. But I wanted to make this point that I cannot say enough about what great work has been done by all, as far as I can tell, proprietors of businesses downtown in Jasper with respect to masking. It has been just exceptional, from the grocery stores to all other businesses. I think everyone has worked well together and has complied and more with requirements. And that is one of the reasons I'm really satisfied to take this step, because I know that I can rely on businesses and proprietors to exercise due diligence in respect of the sort of business they're operating, whether they're a tour company thinking about putting people on buses or in wraps or in closer quarters, indoor spaces. I just want to thank the community and all the businesses for your great efforts. It has not been easy and it's not over. But it's one of the reasons I'm satisfied to take the step, that we have had such good buy-in from the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I think that I had the motion before us for third reading at this meeting. If there is no further debate, I will call that question. That is that we agree to all three readings at this meeting. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And so might I have then a motion from someone to have council read for the third and final time bylaw number 238? Councillor Butler, you're prepared to make that motion for third reading?
Sorry, yes, I
Yeah.
thought that's what we just did, but now I see how you've proceeded. Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any debate on this motion for third reading? I just wanted to add that as I indicated earlier, I do favor this and I will vote in support, but I just want to state that there is nothing which prevents businesses or individuals from continuing to wear masks where they think it is prudent to do so. I have spoken to a few business owners in the community, and they reiterate what Mr. Given indicated earlier, that it has become much more challenging to deal with the masking issue. But they recognize that isn't in the last 2 weeks since we reached stage 2, because people have different expectations and the level of tolerance has changed considerably, and the challenge for business has certainly become greater. But they recognize too that regardless, they are proprietors within their walls, and they can set standards for themselves. And every individual, having learned what we have all learned through the last 16 months or so, is free to make the choice that best reflects their level of comfort and concern. So people can continue to wear masks wherever they choose. It is simply a question of whether we are going to make it compulsory in certain settings. And that gives me comfort. As Councillor Butler said, our community has done an exceptional job. We welcomed thousands of visitors through the winter on a weekly basis and managed to keep our numbers low. And it's a credit to the really focused attention that business and individuals are paying to the safety of themselves, their workers, and the community generally. So I take a great deal of comfort in that and to support this motion for third reading. Any further debates? I will call the question then that council read for the third and final time bylaw number 238, the temporary compulsory face covering repeal bylaw, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to repeal the temporary compulsory face covering bylaws number 228, 230, and 231. All in favor? Those opposed? There is one opposed. That is carried. All right, thank you all for that. It might be, well, it's getting on. If we enter the next debate, it may take us beyond 11, but I'm open to the will of council. Would you like a recess now and then engage in agenda item 8, or would you like to push on for 8.1 now and then take a break? Is there any sense among people? I am going to take the initiative and the privilege of the chair, and I will call it a quick recess right now. It is 10:45. I'll call a recess for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 10:55 and continue with agenda item 8.1. And there's Councillor Wilson. So we are back. I will call us back to session. We are at agenda item 8.1, municipal face covering mandates, conduct in public places bylaw. This is one where I provided notice of motion, so I think it is appropriate at this stage that I relinquish the chair to Deputy Mayor McGrath to conduct the meeting until we conclude the business under agenda item 8.1. And with Councillor McGrath now in the chair, Deputy Mayor, I will, if I may, present a motion. And that motion is that council rescind motions number 212/20 and 326/20, such rescissions to be effective and commence on such date as the province of Alberta moves to stage 3 of its open for summer plan, and to continue for so long as the province of Alberta remains in stage 3 of its open for summer plan. So that is my motion. If I may open debate on that motion, Deputy Mayor McGrath.
Yes, of course.
This is specific to masking in outdoor places. The initial bylaw was subject to sidewalks in the downtown core, in particular, identified sidewalks, not all of them, and generally throughout the community where 2-meter distancing could not be maintained. And then in the fall, we had another motion to extend the sidewalk wearing of masks in public places to include sidewalks adjacent to hotels at both ends, the north end of town and the west end of town. And that continues to be the case. I brought forward this motion on the same basis as the repeal of the bylaw for indoor public masking, and that is on the basis that the province has announced that when we reach stage 3, which is a combination of vaccine uptake in the province plus hospital numbers, but when we reach that, their restrictions will all be lifted and we will be in a new regime. So I brought this in part simply that we are not caught by surprise, and whatever we do so consciously and intentionally. And again, my suggestion has been and is that we configure the rescission of our motions to be effective when the province hits stage 3. But in this case, because the province has never dealt with outdoor public masking or masking in outdoor public places in the same sense that Jasper has, I recognize that if the province is required to go back to stage 2, then our motion should revert again, and we would go back to outdoor public masking if we go back to stage 2. So trying to cover both sides. Again, the reasoning is similar to the debate on indoor public masking. The population, particularly the visitor population, has been given an expectation of where things will stand. And already in anticipation of the removal of restrictions, we have seen more and more people wearing masks in fewer places, and it is becoming a concern for enforcement in a general sense, and it's liable to get worse. It is also a bit dangerous for our reputation as a visitor community when we cannot meet expectations. That is coupled with growing scientific evidence, and this is only my interpretation of that. I don't purport to be any sort of expert, but indicating that outdoor risk is so much less than was previously thought. And so this deals specifically with outdoor masking. And you will know that over the course of the last several months, we have received correspondence from outside the community, essentially saying that we should get with the program and follow the science. We have always tried to do that. We have always tried to follow the science. We've always accepted that our role is to augment the efforts of the province as it deals with a public health crisis that is fully within provincial jurisdiction. We've augmented that at the local level where we can. I think that it is time to say we have done an excellent job here helping the province get to the point where we are approaching 70% of the population vaccinated. That's wonderful news. Our community is a highlight in that regard as well. I think that there is still going to be lots of effort focused on preventative measures. There's going to be continual effort on vaccines. But there are negatives now to maintaining outdoor public masking, in my view, that outweigh the continuation of the motions that we have under the Conduct in Public Places bylaw. So my motion is that we rescind those, but be prepared to reactivate them if we go back from stage 3 to stage 2. And that is all, and I won't comment further on the close of debate. Deputy Mayor McGrath, I won't feel the need to do that. I think I've said all that I can possibly think to say on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you for your motion. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion or debate the motion? Councillor Demoda.
Thank you, Ms. Deputy Mayor, Mrs. Deputy Mayor, well, I guess, yeah, you wouldn't be married to anybody that's a deputy, so you're just Deputy Mayor. Anyway, having fun with that. No, I just wanted to thank the mayor for coming forward with this and showing the leadership on this, and to providing a lot of clarity. I don't have any questions or debate on this. I just appreciate the delivery in it, and I'm grateful to be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demoda. Councillor Keller-Rempe.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Ireland, I just need to tell you that our competition goes till July 15th. So this is a great way to encourage all our citizens to go out and get a jab. As we're just 66%, you said, so it'd be great that if we got to 80% before July 15th for our competition with our other mayors in the area. I also believe that we should support this motion. Again, like as Mayor Ireland said, it's up to us. Anybody that wants to wear a mask can wear a mask. And I know a lot of people said to me that, you know, if you do rescind this, I'm fine with that because I'm still going to wear my mask downtown. And I'll probably wear my own mask downtown. I just want to compliment Bylaw. I was downtown on Saturday, and our two youngest new Bylaw officers, they did an excellent job. My husband and I, actually my husband was going for his second shot downtown. We were going to PharmaSave, and there was a group of about 10 people, no masks. And I have to say they handled it with great grace. It was very nice to watch and see how they handled it. And I just want to thank them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keller-Rempe. Councillor Butler.
Thanks very much. I, of course, got the cart before the horse a little bit and made some of the comments that apply more to this motion than they did to the bylaw earlier, but I got that out of the way. I just think that it's important for the community to understand that we as council have to remain fixated and focused on outcomes, on positive outcomes for the community. And while many of us may desire an outcome where the majority of people downtown continue to wear masks, I don't think that outcome is within our reach. I can think we could have, say, oh, well, we still have a bylaw in town. And the outcome would actually be more conflict and not more mask wearing, not significantly more. And I'm really concerned about that. This has been a hard road all the way along. It has been hard on the mental health of everyone, councillors, residents, visitors alike. And it is time to just lift a little bit. And this will help with that. As Councillor Keller-Rampey said, people who wish to still wear a mask can. And I do think that we could afford to keep a communication plan in place. Simply ask people, please wear a mask in crowded spaces. And I'm primarily concerned about placing enforcement officials into an impossible position by asking them to enforce a regulation that people will come to this town in full expectation is not in place because they've been told that by provincial public health experts. So I'm certainly in favor of this. There's some reluctance because I do respect those in the community who would wish it to be otherwise, but say what we will, we could keep these regulations in place and most people will not wear masks downtown when they go into phase 3 anyway. And so what will we have achieved? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Any other comments or debate on Mayor Ireland's motion? Is the motion clear or does it need to be reread? Everyone has the motion. Perfect. I will call the question. All in favor? And there are none opposed. That motion is carried. Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and I will hand the chair back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McGrath. That takes us to agenda item 8.2, input for draft Jasper National Park Management Plan. Mr. Given, did you wish to speak to that?
Only very briefly, Your Worship. Council saw this at committee last week. Council at that time provided input. I believe the input has been reflected in the attachment in the green highlighter. So the yellow highlighter was the first round suggestions, and you'll see that there are a few points there, particularly under management of area objective 1.1, where we specify that the transition towards land use planning and development authorities in the town site to the municipality should occur no later than 2023. So being a bit more specific, not saying we should wait to have that discussion until 2023, but that the intention there should be that it should happen no later than, that the transfer should happen no later than. There's an additional target added under area 1.3 to engage with municipal council and the community to review the limits to growth and the commercial cap on development within the town site. So a little bit more specificity as requested by committee. And then on the next page at the very bottom, another additional bullet added: Parks Canada and the municipality and other local stakeholders collaborate on transportation of visitors to and within the community. And so I think that is reflective of the feedback that was given at committee last week. The request today is that council approve this as the municipality's formal feedback into the process. When council is satisfied with it, and there is a motion to that effect, administration would forward this on to Parks Administration. Would note that there is a bit of a timing issue here, that feedback is only accepted until July 7th. So it would be best if council was able to approve this today. If there are requirements for any sort of small changes, of course, we can take those here at the table by motion. And ideally, if this is here for council consideration and adoption, so that the municipality of Jasper can provide formal input into the Parks Canada process of developing the Jasper National Park Management Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Comments or questions from councillors? I might start then, Mr. Given, just in terms of formatting. If council approves the submission in this general sense, what will that submission look like?
Sure. Thanks, Your Worship. So if it's presented this way for legibility so that council is able to see it clearly. If council made a motion approving this, adopting this as council's input into the process, I would imagine a letter from myself to Mr. Fair stating that council had made a motion on such and such a day to provide the following feedback into the process, and then describing that feedback, presenting it specifically in the context of that letter, saying, these following items, that this be amended to read so-and-so, that this bullet point be added, that this, and really in the context of the letter. So a bit of a tidying up of this, identifying the specific changes that council wish to have, and identifying that it came via formal motion at the council table.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments from councillors? Go ahead, Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. I wanted only really to convey my thanks to Mr. Given and administration for what I think was a really effective process. And I'm happy to see a somewhat more public approach to some of these discussions than what we have seen in the past. It is good that the community see that council is addressing some of these hot point issues with council, with Parks Canada, and is doing so as is appropriate for a municipal council in public venues. So I really do appreciate the work that has been done by administration. And I think it's important to recognize that this could represent one of those difficult areas where administration has to find the right line between leading council or directing council and proposing direction for council, and it has worked really well. I'm broadly happy with what we see here. We could nuance this for the next 10 years, there's no doubt, but we have until sometime July. And I think we really have hit the high points of the issues that we know are important to the community. While this particular submission will not have had a great and long opportunity for community input, of course, residents themselves can have input into Parks Canada's management plan process because it is Parks Canada's process, not our process. So I think the way this has been gone about is quite appropriate. And again, I encourage residents to look closely at the contents of this submission, because I think I feel quite confident that we have accurately reflected the preponderance of opinion that is out there in the community, and that's our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. And I echo the comments made by Councillor Butler on what a great job administration has done bringing this forward to us in the way in which it was presented to council. I agree with moving forward with this version of the Jasper National Park Management Plan feedback to Jasper National Park, and I'm very grateful for administration's work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Butler.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun. I was going to offer to make the motion, but I think I cut off something you were about to say, so I apologize.
I was going to request that somebody make a motion.
Well, then I only jumped the gun. I am happy to do so. Thank you.
I might just add a word or two to the motion. The motion, I think, is that council formally approve a submission of input to Parks Canada on the draft management plan for Jasper National Park. And might I add, based on the material presented in the agenda today, just to put some limits, Mr. Given, on the submission. It's fairly general the way the motion has been presented. So, but it's clear enough that everybody recognizes that it's based on the revised document that's in our agenda today. All right, so that is the motion, and if approved, then Mr. Given will draft the appropriate letter and get it off to his counterpart. Well, if that is a counterpart, but the Field Unit Superintendent of Jasper National Park. Is there any further debate on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you again, Mr. Given and your staff for presenting this in a very public way so that the public can see exactly what our position is on the draft management plan. And although it doesn't fit within the letter you are about to send, when you next speak to Parks Canada, perhaps also convey our gratitude for their willingness to get a certification of the bylaw we passed earlier today, so that we could in fact do all three readings. It's a rare opportunity, but they do what they can to assist us, and it's very much appreciated. So pass that along as well, please. All right, that takes us to agenda item 8.3, appointments to the Regional Assessment Review Board. And after some amount of confusion a week ago, I think it is all straightened out where we want to be with respect to this. Mr. Given, are you going to present this, or need it be presented? And if so, is it Ms. Nadon who's going to do that?
Your Worship, I don't think that there is anything to present. I appreciate it. Last committee, there was a bit of a question about cycle and whose turn it was. I think we actually sorted that out at the table during the committee meeting, but I can confirm administration has followed up, and we are in the appropriate cycle. This is the recommendation of the regional committee that manages Assessment Review Board, and so we are comfortable with the recommendation that's here. And again, I think we had that discussion at committee last week, and appreciated Councillor Butler highlighting that question. And then I think we actually confirmed it, as I said, at the table last week, that we are actually in the appropriate cycle. But administration did follow up just to confirm that with the regional group. And so the recommendation still stands that council appoint Michelle Deshane as designated clerk, and that council appoint Paul Butler as a designated chair. I might make a little bit of a note here that I think the reference to Councillor Butler in the motion is him as an individual rather than as councillor. I don't believe that his position on that board is dependent on his position on council. And so it's just a subtle difference. You'll notice that we're referencing Councillor Butler by his full name as an independent person rather than as Councillor Butler in the motion, and that there's a specific reason for that.
Thank you for that. And for clarity, one motion with both components, or do you prefer two motions?
We could have one motion with both components, if it suits council.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'd like to make the motion that council appoint Michelle Deshane as the designated clerk for the West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Review Board, starting immediately and ending on April 30th, 2022, and that council appoint Paul Butler as the designated chair of the West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Board, starting immediately, ending on April 30th, 2022. The designated chair's remuneration and expenses will follow the municipality of Jasper council member compensation and benefits policy.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath, for that motion. Is there any debate on the motion? I will then call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. All right, we have some correspondence for information, consideration, or action today. And I am not sure whether, go ahead, Councillor Keller-Ramsay.
Mayor Ireland, Council, may I be excused on these topics as I have a conflict as I work for SunDog Tours.
Yes, thank you for that attention to detail, Councillor Keller-Ferentby, and I think respectfully, you need not request permission. You simply indicate that you have a conflict and are going to excuse yourself from not only the decision but the discussion. And I thank you for drawing that to our attention and invite you to disengage. And perhaps when we are done with agenda item 9, someone will send you a text and invite you back into the meeting. But to follow the legislation, you can't, even going off, turning your camera off doesn't do it. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Given, we have the letter before us. Was there an intent to have a presenter?
Your worship, I don't know whether Mr. Hardy is in attendance, but in any case, I believe actually that he is, I'm sorry. But in any case, my advice to council would be, unless you have any questions about this letter or the correspondence, either item of correspondence, you could simply receive the correspondence for information and direct administration to review it. It will be helpful as council knows, we are discussing the COVID recovery reserve, and this would be helpful background information certainly for administration to be able to present to council in the context of that discussion. I don't believe there's any decision making that can necessarily be made today. It may be a matter of receiving this for information, referring it to administration, and then administration can bring forward at an appropriate time for council discussion, debate, and decision making. Having said that, I would, as I said before, note that Mr. Hardy is in the attendee list, and so I suppose if council wish to ask any questions about the letter, then you certainly have the chance to do that firsthand here.
Thank you for that. I would anticipate that if this is a program that council endorses and if it's to get started this year, any delay could be problematic. And if Mr. Hardy has sat through the last 2 hours patiently waiting with an expectation of being heard, I am certainly inclined to welcome him to be a panelist and hear from him and allow councillors to ask any questions. If there's no objection to that, I see Mr. Hardy is now on screen. Welcome, Mr. Hardy. We have your letter. Is there anything you wish to add to the letter that we already have?
No, for starters, thanks for having me out. I didn't think you were going to be welcoming to this meeting, but I appreciate it. I think the background really tells really everything I had to say. It seems to be timely from a logistical standpoint, from a business environment standpoint. With the reopening of the campground now just seemed a time to do this. And as you said, time is kind of the essence. So I appreciate you reviewing this. And I think it's good from a visitor standpoint, from a business standpoint, and from a local standpoint. I think it really is a true win-win-win. And I look forward to discussing.
Well, thank you very much. And at least on my own behalf, I think on behalf of council, thank you for stepping forward with such a proposal. I think it does have real relevance in COVID times as we recover, but in general times, it ties into the transportation issues that we see in this community in any event, good times in particular. So I thank you for bringing it forward. Are there questions from any councillors for Mr. Hardy? Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland, and thank you, Mr. Hardy, for both being here and for taking the time to write us. I see that Mr. Jackson is also on the line. I'd like to show gratitude and extend gratitude to Tourism Jasper and Mr. Jackson for writing us. You know, as we have recommendations coming forward from the Economic Recovery Task Force, and we saw highlighted in green on that Jasper National Park Management Plan, transportation has been an issue in Jasper for a long time, and it is a win-win-win. I see this proposal being presented from SunDog Tours in collaboration with Tourism Jasper and the municipality taking part in this as an excellent opportunity to provide transportation, as Mr. Hardy said, to the new campground opening up with, I think the number is around 800 additional visitors to our community and to our downtown, as well as mentioned in the letter, the patio seating taking up some parking spaces, and this already being an existing issue that has needed attention brought to it for some time now. I would absolutely support this project moving forward, and I do agree the timeliness is super important. We're already halfway through June. The sooner we can initiate this, the better. And I'd like to thank the private industry coming forward and collaborating with us. It's amazing to see this type of collaboration and work happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Wilson?
Well, my question was, I guess, the opposite. Why collaborate with the municipality? Why wouldn't this be more of a completely private venture? You know, what does the municipality do for, or what can we do for this project, I guess is my question.
I think municipality, in terms of the interests of the business community and the residents of Jasper, that and particularly this summer with the way the patio situation has gone, and I think the patios add to the ambiance of downtown, but it certainly has created some logistical challenges and some infrastructure challenges. And I just think that a collaboration that solves things for the community in general should be a responsibility, or certainly on the agenda of council. And doing this as a partnership, I have less appetite for risk than I normally would. I think that doing this where we're dispersing the risk somewhat, but everybody has skin in the game, as they say, is again, it's a good use of council resources, town resources, and you can demonstrate back to the community that you've really addressed the needs of a whole cross section of both business and residents. So I think if you can show that you're encouraging commerce, that you're making the community safer, that you're making the visitor experience better, improving visitor experience, should that not be the goal of council as a whole?
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson, if you had a follow-up.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. No, I totally agree. It's something that we would have liked to see already, you know, some type of public transportation, and I'm really excited that you're proposing this for sure. I just, yeah, as a businessman, I thought that you may want to take this on yourself, and I just didn't want to be, as a municipality, competing with commerce, right? So, but then again, I see your point in mitigating the financial risk of this new venture, as it does benefit, you know, our community as a whole. What kind of, or is it too early to ask what kind of number we're looking at for commitment?
No, it's actually all in the.
Does everybody hear? His mic's not, or Paul, your mic's not working.
Sorry, Mr. Hardy, although you appear to be unmuted, you are muted.
Sorry, it showed I wasn't muted. So you didn't hear any of that?
We did not.
Oh, sorry about that. It was right on the money, by the way. But no, but in terms of the ask, Scott, is in the proposal. And yeah, it's I have this down as a 3-year commitment, and there's nothing worse than a one and done kind of initiative where you start something, it gets out of the gate, 3 months later, for whatever reason, it falls down, not only does it fail for that year, but that initiative, in my experience, also fails on a longer term. It's very difficult then to get public trust behind a service like this. So my goal is to have this as a 3-year partnership, is also to build this up. And after the 3 years, we then put this into a spot where we've built the trust of the public. It's become a more viable business. And then I will be moving towards doing this as a standalone venture on my own. You know, had we had more time, I think that the parking issues and parking, now we're talking about the paid parking initiative, the regional traffic, all the things that I explained in the proposal. I think even things like last summer, we saw how crazy places like Lake Edith got, to the point where it's a safety concern. I just thought that this needed to be dealt with quickly. Do I have the appetite for risk on my own right now? I don't. So I thought, why don't we do this where we're pulling the main stakeholders together on something, but where I have carrying some of the risk myself, to make sure that we all kind of have skin in the game. We're all motivated to see this succeed. As an operator, it's going to be, I'm the only one that's really, the proposal as it stands right now is a break-even proposal, which means if I operate this with no passengers right now, in the 3-way split, I lose the third of what I'm committing. Could I propose this on my own? I could have, but I wouldn't have. And I think probably the question that council should be asking itself is, we've removed a really key piece of infrastructure in town, or a good portion of it, in terms of the parking. I feel like in something, and now we're going to be charging for what's remaining. And I think it's always good to have a bit of a give and take. So you've said that we've removed a certain amount of parking. It's great for the ambiance downtown, but by doing that and removing that infrastructure, you've discouraged visitation in a lot of ways. So we've made it difficult for people to visit the downtown, to spend money downtown. We've made it more difficult for locals to shop and do necessary, the necessary day-to-day tasks downtown. So what are you giving back? And I think that right now, with all this happening, that this transit service was something to say, okay, we recognize what the challenges are. We recognize the challenges to the visitors. We recognize the challenges to the locals, and we recognize challenges to businesses downtown. We have to make sure that commerce is convenient, and we need to do it quickly. So I thought that, yeah, would I normally be proposing something at the beginning of June to start at the end of June? No, but I think that the environment has changed so quickly, and this is something that needed to be addressed in a timely manner. So to bring together, a public-private partnership was kind of perfect timing. I think that the public is, could justifiably say, well, if I was doing this, just asking for all the money, what was going to keep me motivated? But by doing it this way, it's making sure that we are motivated to do this service properly, to drive as much traffic as possible to it, which in turn means that's going to be driving more traffic downtown, which should be good for everybody involved.
Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hardy. I appreciate the idea. I think for me at least, in terms of rationalization and understanding of why we might consider that, I'm all in. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think now is a good time. My problem is, and I'm following up on Councillor Wilson's questions, the nature of the proposed partnership from a financial point of view. The specific financial ask here is not clear to me. I don't, maybe that's deliberate. Maybe what we're looking for here today is sort of a nod that council is interested in building out this idea. And I'm certainly in favor of that. I would suggest that we as Mr. Gibbon suggested, that we ask administration to come back to us with a little bit of an outline of what the three-way partnership that is proposed here might look like from a financial point of view, how the municipality would be asked to share risk. I see here how in the event of real success, profit is shared, but I don't see the risk side of it. So if we could have that come back to us as early as next week, I think we could move quickly, but I would need to understand better what the three-way partnership would look like.
So, well, I apologize, both Paul and Scott, then if the proposal isn't clear there, but I really thought that it was. And I don't know if you have the proposal in front of you, but basically what I've done is I've done a daily cost breakdown of what this service would cost to operate. And that's basically just to cover the cost of the service. There isn't margin built into this breakdown. Okay, so then I've then taken that of what it would cost. So say we started June 26th, which might be a little bit optimistic right now, but let's just say that it did. And it ran until September 26th, which I think addresses the busiest point of summer, where we're going to have most of the logistical challenges, both in town and in outlying areas that I spoke to earlier in the proposal. So I took those daily costs, I multiplied it by the amount of days that we are going to operate, and essentially divided that by 3. With the muni, and other, I know James is also in the meeting. Other was money that James was going to be leveraging through Tourism Jasper and Travel Alberta. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say that. James might want to address it. And the other third being my commitment as my contribution, I should say, as the operating partner. So essentially, the municipality's total risk is the way I have this on, and let's say it went the 26th of June to the 26th of September, your total risk would be just under $24,000 for that in total for the total operating term. Now, again, I think that you have to ask yourselves, is that a worthwhile investment to the community? And if you don't think so, I get, the conversation would be over. But that's really, that is your total commitment that I'm asking for. I also made clear in here that cost overruns, for whatever reason, would be my responsibility. This would be a one-time commitment. And I think it just really comes down to, do you feel like that there's significant enough return on investment for the community? Does it help you solve enough issues to make that a worthwhile investment? And I know we could come back to it next week, but I think that we could figure it out right now. Sorry, not when I say figure it out right now, I just want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what my ask is from an investment standpoint.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demota?
Well, I think the timing's really good on this one, particularly on top of what, the issues that Mr. Hardy addressed. We're also going to have some disruption potentially on Connaught with the service additions below ground infrastructure. So, we might be deterring some visitation here, but we're also going to be displacing a lot of people and their vehicles. And I think an opportunity here to test drive this, it's been discussed here since, I moved to Jasper some 30 years ago. And, we've had shuttle services going from here and there in various, capacities, but not in a concrete form like this. And I understood the costs here, and it was clear to me. So, is this good for the community as a whole? I think so. I understand the costs. What are the costs of not doing it? We're not sure, but we have the costs of going forward with this, and there's potential for success here. And is it the right thing to do? I think it's a good thing to do. And again, with all the stuff that's going on, and the increased visitation here again, from hopefully the opening of our biggest campground, we can, I think, mitigate a lot of that stress from the visitor to getting into town from those various places. So I'm for supporting this and having further discussion at committee and going forward. I think it's great, and I appreciate the info that's there. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor McGrath, go ahead.
My apologies, Mayor Ireland. I was hoping to be able to speak to this one more time. Paul asked us a question, and I do feel that this is significant, and it is significant enough. Return both on investment and on social capital. It's significant in our community's economic recovery. It's significant all around. I would love to direct administration to review this proposal and have it back before us for committee next week. And I would also address this if we do have a special meeting next week. I think this would be an excellent addition to the agenda for a special meeting to vote on this on the 22nd, with the hope that if council is in agreement of implementing this program in a collaborative spirit, the way it's been presented to us, that it does have the opportunity to begin as early as possible. I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic to think that on the 22nd we could be implementing this on the 26th, but definitely as soon as possible, which I see an opportunity for at the next meeting next week.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. I certainly agree that in principle, I appreciate this opportunity that you brought forward and agree that it should be received by council and directed to administration to come back with a recommendation. The question that I have now for you, Mr. Hardy, however, just relates to sort of some of the other options that might be available but aren't listed. You indicated early on about those with skin in the game, and I agree that from a municipal perspective, we do. This is a really important adjunct to the overall transportation issues that we face in the community, and for that reason, I welcome it. But it also has a profound impact on Parks Canada, but they are not indicated as a potential partner at all. You will need a site at Wapiti and Whistler if you're going to make a trip out to Lake Annette, Lake Edith. That could have a tremendously beneficial effect on those areas and a real benefit to Parks Canada. So I see them as having skin in the game, but not in this game. And I wonder whether you've had any discussions with Parks Canada about whether they would be interested in being a financial partner. And not only are their guests, their visitors served by this, but it seems to me there is a significant environmental net positive gain, something that Parks Canada should be very much interested in pursuing. And finally, I note that they do a very similar thing in Banff. So the Rome buses are heavily supported by the federal government through Parks Canada in Banff. And would they not be equally interested in a public transit option in our community? And yet other than the fact that you've had some discussion with them regarding signage and logistics, they don't appear as a partner at all.
Thanks, Richard. No, that's definitely good points. And I would say that Parks is probably an equally logical partner as the town of Jasper. And I have spoken to Pam Clark. They're having a meeting on this on Wednesday to have discussions. They would be the perfect partner. They'd be a logical partner. I think, as you say, it would certainly, it would fit their mandate. It would be, from a logistical and an infrastructure standpoint, there'd be ideal. I also have to be realistic about how quickly I can get things to happen with Parks Canada. You know, they're just not built to react quickly to proposals like this. When I said other originally as a partner, James and Tourism Jasper are very proactive, and they saw the need for this quickly, and they jumped in to be the third partner in this. I would like to say, I also have in the proposal that this would be subject to review. And basically what I would really love to see is to have this as a partner between the municipality, Parks Canada, and SunDog. To me, that makes the most sense as a partnership. You're completely right. It checks the boxes from an environmental standpoint, a logistical standpoint, all those things. But if we agree that this is something that needs to happen this year, and this is an issue that's facing us right now, and that needs to be addressed, and to show the public that we recognize that there are challenges now that need to be dealt with, and we need to be proactive, then I think we have to be realistic about who the partners are that can be nimble enough to do this in a way that addresses the need in a timely fashion. And this certainly isn't to be to make disparaging marks about Parks Canada, but they just aren't built to react quickly enough to this. I know that they're interested. They agree that there are challenges, and I think that they see that they need to be addressed. And I think that we're going to have some really productive conversations going forward. Are we going to have this remedied and have them as a financial partner by July? I think it's too optimistic. Now, on the logistical side of things, Pam has already gotten back to me saying that they have in the refurbishment of both Wapiti and Whistler, there is going to be much easier bus turnaround points. I've talked to them about getting information to guests regarding the shuttle schedule that are going to try to make clear to them how, like the pickup points, pick up, drop off, how it's going to work, but also from a payment standpoint, QR codes, that kind of thing. I think that we can get them to be basically an operational partner in the short term. A financial partner will be longer term. But yeah, it's on our radar, and that would be the ideal partnership long term.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very full response and the realism that's expressed in that. So thank you. And I didn't ask the question to suggest that I am personally not interested. I am very much interested with or without Parks Canada, but they do seem to be a very relevant potential partner in all of this. Councillor Demoda.
Well, as far as reviewing our overall transportation master plan or study, I think that this is a relevant situation, and not to repeat myself, but we haven't had anybody really come to the table with a concrete plan to address the incurring issues, and the fact that we have a local business that's able to address those gaps and come forward with a plan like this, I think is definitely worth discussing and reviewing together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demoda. Right, I think that I can accept that there was a motion from Councillor McGrath that we receive this correspondence as information and direct further consideration by administration to return next committee of the whole meeting with a recommendation. And if that requires some internal administrative discussion with Mr. Hardy, then that's accepted. But that is the motion, that we accept for information and direct administration to come back with a recommendation. Any further discussion with respect to that motion before I call the question? I see nothing, so I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed, so that is carried. So the essence of that then, Mr. Hardy, is that we've accepted your letter. We're going to ask Mr. Given and his team to review it, potentially directly with you. So you might expect a call to work out some of the details. And we will hope that by next Tuesday, we will have a recommendation. I know that pushes pushes administration quite hard because there's limited time between now and 4 o'clock tomorrow to have things ready for the agenda, which comes out on Friday. But they will find a way to do it because that is what they do so well. So thank you, and it will be back, and you can log in again next week for our committee of the whole discussion to see where we go. Just before we leave, I thank you again, Mr. Hardy, and as did Deputy Mayor McGrath. I thank Mr. Jackson for his supporting letter, recognizing that he has been there sitting throughout as well. I did have one question about his letter. I noticed that it was copied to you and 4 others. I don't want to position anyone, but would it be fair for me to interpret that those individuals and their businesses are supportive of your initiative? I could log them in as the in favor camp, at least part of the in favor camp for now. All right, perhaps I didn't get through to Mr. Hardy, but I will interpret it such in any event.
Sorry, Richard, for some reason I didn't get the last, the last 30 seconds that I didn't get. I'm sorry.
There are a list of individuals at businesses who have been copied with the letter from Mr. Jackson in support. And so I'm going to assume, unless I hear otherwise, that those businesses are equally supportive of this initiative, the proposal that you brought forward. So that is the Jasper Brewing Company, Rockaboo Mountain Adventures, Jasper Motorcycle Tours, and Bombshell and Ransom. Yeah, like I've had you know, informal conversations with plenty of different businesses, but I know James has done a good job reaching out to plenty of them, and so has Patty at the Chamber. She's been really a proponent of it, and I think has reached out to a pretty big cross section of businesses and business owners. So I think as we go down the line, it's you find pretty widespread support for it. But yeah, they'd be probably available to submit more who they've discussed this with as well. All right, thank you for that. Now my screen has frozen up. I don't know whether anybody can hear me at all.
We hear you, Mayor Ireland. Your picture is just frozen. Now you're back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, we will say that for today's session, we have concluded agenda item 9. Thank you again, Mr. Hardy. And we will be back next week, and you can link in again.
I have
agenda item
sent
10.
Councillor Keller-Hempy has been sent a message.
Thank you for the time today. I didn't expect to get a amount of the time, but I appreciate it. Thanks very much, and look forward to further conversation.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. All right, Councillor Keller-Hempy will tune in. I will repeat the question if necessary for her, but is there any other new business from any councillor for today? Councillor Butler?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Council will already know how reluctant I am to bring up new business unannounced, but this is in the nature of business emerging. I suppose I had chose not to ask that this be placed on the agenda because I didn't know what the outcome of our discussions about the bylaw and conduct in public places would be, but I raised the suggestion that part and parcel of the actions that we took today would be to develop a communications campaign. And I would, if council is interested, be prepared to move that we direct administration to develop a communication campaign involving council and the organization to encourage mask wearing in crowded spaces and to encourage vaccination by residents. I'm particularly interested in the second piece of that for all the reasons that I referenced earlier. There's nothing more important for the community right now than to increase the vaccination rate in the community. I'm not going to make the motion just to have it deferred, or well, I would make the motion even if council wanted it deferred, but if council's not interested, I'm not trying to buck the proponents of opinion, but I wondered if it was appropriate, given the time constraints here, to just take a view of whether council is interested in taking that direction.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I would anticipate that our communications team would in any event be preparing to communicate the repeal of the bylaw.
Certainly.
But a secondary focus on vaccination, although it may not have been top of mind, might fit in well with that in any event. And I would be supportive of that, not to make additional work, but simply to reiterate that we would have an expectation that these sorts of decisions are going to be communicated in a very public way in any event. I'd be interested to hear from you, Mr. Given, whether you have any comments with respect to the proposed motion, which is not yet a motion.
I would just say, Your Worship, that the communications team is fully engaged right now in public communications around paid parking, reopening of municipal facilities, and preparing for the utility servicing project if council chooses to go ahead. So I would just make the observation that it is a fairly busy time in that area. We do have resources. They only go so far. And so if council chooses to go forward with a motion like this, administration would have to provide some advice on, sort of the extent of that public communications campaign. I'm not sure that it would necessarily involve a detailed plan and a bunch of, visual materials. And so we just would need to, I think, be realistic about what is possible to provide given current resources. But if council is interested in this direction, administration is certainly happy to provide some advice to council after the fact of what that might look like. And if council doesn't meet what council was expecting, then we can talk about what resources would be required to meet council's expectations.
Councillor Butler, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and for myself, I am absolutely not thinking of something really large and extensive. I just do feel that what has emerged through these conversations and has emerged in the broader stage in the past few weeks is just this importance of vaccination. And it is an area that I think we as a council should support. So perhaps we could just leave it that administration might come back, as Mr. Given suggested, just some advice on options or ideas next week. I'm not looking for a lot, and I respect that the other issues that Mr. Given raised are important and are issues that council has asked to be addressed. So I won't make the motion, but I wonder if we could informally just ask administration what we could do, because we do social media work all the time anyway, and I'm really just thinking more along those lines and not, for example, where vaccination is concerned, we're talking to residents. So I'm not sure that we need to be thinking about a lot of signage and a lot of additional communication. So I'm satisfied if that's the will of council. Thank you.
Councillor Demota.
Well, I just want to say I certainly appreciate the concern, and we can also, if we get back to this in when at the next meeting in business arising from the minutes as well, if it need be. So I'm comfortable with it being left today, and then potentially discussing down the future if there are issues. Thank you.
I think that Councillor Butler was inquiring whether his presentation might represent the will of council. I agree with it. In the absence of any objection, I would say that that does generally express the will of council. And that is simply, Mr. Given, that have your staff think about what might be done and let us know. And I see no objection from anyone So I will, in the absence of objection, say that that is the will of council. And so you know that. Thank you for that. Is there any other new business to raise today? Councillor reports. Councillor Kelleher-Empty and then Councillor Journeau.
Mayor Ireland and I attended the lemonade tasting the other day by Community Futures with our 4 young entrepreneurs that are going out this Saturday with their stands and selling their lemonades in Jasper. So I encourage everybody to get out there and visit these stands. If anybody would like to volunteer from the municipality, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kelleher-Empty. I have to say, we judged 4 different recipes of lemonade, and any one of them could have been the winner. There were 5 judges and somebody had to come out on top, but any one of them could easily have been the winner. They were fantastic. Councillor Journeau.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I missed the lemonade tasting. Last Friday, I attended again via Zoom the annual general meeting of the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association. And just want to highlight one comment that was made by a longstanding member representing the city of Edmonton. The association itself has been around for a long time. I think it's got roots back to 1947. And he mentioned that over the years, association of tourism, promotion of tourism, tourism groups have been, for his word, used was fragmented. And I have considered this since I heard that comment. And I see that it happened here in our town as well. He mentioned that, in the fragmentation, you had small groups, and then you had Travel Alberta, and then you had hotel associations, and so on and so forth. And we have all of that here in this town. When in my few decades, or a couple of decades here, the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce was the body involved with tourism. And then now what's happening is that the town is the member of Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association. We've since have Jasper Tourism, which probably does the majority of the promotion, and we still have Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. So we're a fine example of fragmentation of promotion of tourism. And I just bring up the subject because I would like to consider and planting the seed that maybe this fragmentation could be eliminated and unified in some way. I think the adjustment that we've had due to COVID gives us an opportunity to rethink a lot of the things that we've done. And I know that when we do things because we've done them this way for a long time, but maybe in the future, we have to review our practices, our approach, and maybe I would like to, at this time, plant the seed for that thought that the 3 groups could get maybe have a look at the possibility of redoing things, doing things differently in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. There any additional councillor reports? Councillor McGrath, and then Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Connaught.
Tomorrow I will be attending the community conversation for the week. Thursday, I have a Jasper Community Team Society meeting with our new board members, and Monday, a Yellowhead Regional Library meeting.
Thank you for that. Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I want to make a very short report on the last meeting held by Evergreens Foundation Board, which I chair. I want to use this opportunity to give notice that Evergreens Foundation has received a grant. I think I may have mentioned this at an earlier meeting, a grant from the provincial government to in support of building Indigenous housing. This is in relation to a proposal that Evergreens had sort of sitting on the back burner with respect to the potential of an Indigenous housing, seniors housing project on the Victor Lake Cooperative near Grand Cache. We had always had that sitting there as an aspirational idea should funding become available, and then quite abruptly it did, and without any expectation, the Evergreen Foundation did receive a grant from the province. That has necessitated the board to find a way or determine whether we wish to find a way to place that in our development queue, that specific Indigenous housing project. It is anticipated to be a small project of only 12 units. The board has decided it wishes to do so. It means that we have to find the wherewithal within our near-term capital plan to add that project in on top of the already next anticipated build in Wildwood. And the reason I'm mentioning it is one of the directives of the board was to for Evergreen's administration to prepare a report for the 6 participating councils involved in Evergreens to describe how the addition of that priority might change the capital plan on an ongoing basis, and whether it may necessitate a change to anticipated requisitions going into the future, because as council and the public know, Evergreens is funded by capital and operating requisitions from Evergreens. The short answer is we do expect to be able to accomplish this additional build with little or perhaps even no increase to ongoing requisitions, but there will be a formal document and potential presentation from Evergreen's administration coming up in probably the next month, because Evergreen's Foundation will be looking for letters of support from council for this change to our capital plan. It may or may not be clear to council and the public that the capital plan of Evergreen Foundation has and always is on an ongoing basis subjected to requests for approval from the participating municipalities. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to mention that we will be hearing from the administration of Evergreen, and also to mention that because it's really important news and really good news. And I know that there is circulating around already some understanding that there may be a build going on in the Grand Cache area in the foreseeable future. Thank you. I'm prepared to take any questions anybody may have, but as I said, the more appropriate time for that might be when that report comes to council.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler. If there are questions, now would be the appropriate time. Otherwise, I will turn to you, Councillor Demoda. You had your hand up earlier.
Okay, I didn't see any hands, so I'll go forward. We had our monthly Culture and Rec Board meeting last Thursday. We got an update on the operating budget going forward. We discussed council's position on the Western States Hockey League requests, and then we're waiting on the boards and committees review. We seem to be kind of in limbo right now on being able to make decisions, or looking forward to what we can do collectively in the future. There's a big drive to really promote some cultural activity in the community, and nothing's on hold right now, but having a clear view of what the future of the board or / committee might be is going to be helpful. We discussed the challenges and opportunities for the facilities reopenings. Also awaiting, the finalization of the facilities and services review. And then, we had a request from the gymnastics club for some time that was lost in the area due to the partial closure from our one of the sprinkler valves breaking, and that was dealt with. And there's some relief in partial rent there for a month or so. Nothing extremely drastic. I think it was in the area of $1,500 or something, like, or just over. So giving you a report on that. And I think that's just about it for what we discussed on Thursday. We had we had director reports and from Yvonne and Mr. Bridge on the arena, and from Brooke Arith, it's the acting aquatics center manager. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demoda. Are there any further councillor reports? Councillor McGrath?
My apologies, Mayor Ireland. I forgot to mention one other report. Last Thursday, the Communities in Bloom Committee, along with the assistance from the Operations Department with the municipality and some volunteers in the community, including my children, we planted 2 gardens of hope near Service Credit Union. And they are the yellow flowers that are close to the Service Credit Union building. And that's a Canada and Beyond campaign to inspire hope for 2021. So it's a beautiful initiative put together by Communities in Bloom to encourage and motivate hope for 2021. So if you haven't already taken a chance to walk by the Hope is Growing gardens, go take a look.
Thank you for that. All right, I think we can turn to agenda item 12, upcoming events. Councillor Keller-Harempy has reminded us that Lemonade Day is approaching. That's on Saturday, I think you said, the 19th. Yes, thank you. Just for information, I have accepted an invitation to speak at the high school grad this year. So they're going to get that back together. And they, at least now, tentatively believe that it will be an outdoor grad using the CN stage, or the Jim Venice stage at CN Place in Commemoration Park. So nice to see that outdoor venue finally coming back to use after its inauguration so many months ago. And if you're interested, you might be able to at least cozy up to the fence and watch the grads get their diplomas. Any other upcoming events? Councillor Demoda?
Well, I just want to address an ongoing event, and that's the opening up of our town to the visitors, and the diligence of all our staff that are on the ground, whether it's our operations staff or anybody in all the other facilities. Everybody seems to be busy little beavers out there, and I really appreciate the efforts. And if I could lend a hand, I'd be in there with them. But I'm just getting a lot of comments on the hard work that our staff that are visible, at least, that are doing in the community to help us going, and they're working hard, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you for that. I think then we can safely move to agenda item 13. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Councillor Keller-Harempy, that motion is yours. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried unanimously. Thank you all. We didn't today need a motion to go beyond 4 hours even. So thank you all. We're done at 12:12, and I hope everybody is able to, if not enjoy the rest of the day, at least use it productively. So thank you all. Thanks to all those members of the public who tuned in this morning to watch the proceedings. Of course, it's available again on YouTube at a later date. Thank you all. I remind you that I will miss next Tuesday Committee of the Whole and the special meeting, so I will get some work done in the next day or so to sort out the calling of that special meeting to ensure that it is orchestrated so that you can make use of it as necessary. I will do my best to tune in next week, but I have very little expectation that I'll be able to do so. So I know that Deputy Mayor McGrath will have it all well in hand. So thank you all for today, and that is it for now.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and everybody for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.